Tessa Williams cleaned expensive apartments in New York City every single day, even though she once dreamed of becoming a successful writer when she first left Wyoming years ago. Most wealthy people never noticed her existence, and she slowly accepted that life had pushed her far away from her original dreams. Every morning she traveled through crowded subway stations, carrying heavy cleaning supplies, while watching successful strangers rush toward their perfect lives. She kept telling herself that one day things would improve, but deep inside she feared nothing would ever truly change for her. One cold Tuesday afternoon, her manager called with a special assignment inside a luxury penthouse owned by a powerful businessman in Tribeca. The payment was much higher than usual, so Tessa immediately accepted the cleaning job without realizing it would completely transform her life forever. When she stepped inside the enormous penthouse, she felt overwhelmed by the beauty surrounding her from every direction in the massive apartment. Marble floors, expensive paintings, giant windows, and elegant furniture reminded her how far she stood from the world of rich and successful people. Tessa quietly began cleaning the spotless kitchen, before moving toward the huge living room facing the beautiful Hudson River through glass walls. But the moment her eyes landed on the portrait above the fireplace, her entire body froze in complete shock and disbelief. The painting showed a young boy with dark hair and blue eyes holding a small red airplane while smiling brightly at the artist. Tessa instantly recognized the face, because she had once spent 6 unforgettable years beside that same lonely little boy in an orphanage. "Oliver," she whispered softly, while staring at the portrait with trembling hands, and tears forming slowly inside her frightened blue eyes. Memories she had buried for years suddenly returned like a flood, crashing violently through her heart and mind without warning. Tessa grew up inside Meadow Creek Orphanage in Casper, Wyoming, after being abandoned outside a fire station only days after her birth. She never knew her real parents, and the orphanage became the only home she had ever truly remembered during childhood. When Tessa was 6 years old, a silent boy arrived at the orphanage late one summer afternoon carrying absolutely nothing except the clothes on his back. The staff named him Oliver because that word was stitched onto an old shirt he had been wearing. Oliver barely spoke to anyone during his first weeks at the orphanage, and spent most of his time sitting alone near the library windows. Other children avoided him because of his strange silence, but Tessa noticed sadness and fear hidden deep inside his tired eyes. One afternoon she sat beside him with crayons and coloring books, before quietly asking if he wanted to draw something together with her. Oliver accepted silently and carefully drew a detailed airplane, beginning a friendship neither of them would ever forget throughout their entire lives. Over the next several years, Tessa and Oliver became inseparable inside the lonely orphanage filled with abandoned children and broken dreams everywhere around them. They shared meals, homework, stories, fears, and secret hopes about one day finally finding families who would truly love them. Oliver often talked about airplanes and dreamed about becoming a pilot someday, while sketching aircraft designs across entire notebooks late at night. But whenever Tessa asked about his past, Oliver struggled to remember anything clearly beyond strange fragmented memories and painful headaches. Sometimes he remembered a beautiful city, a man's voice, a woman's smile, and a home with a bright red door near the entrance. But every time he tried remembering more details, fear and confusion overwhelmed him, until he stopped speaking completely for hours afterward. Everything changed when Tessa turned 12 years old, and a kind couple arrived at the orphanage searching for a daughter to adopt permanently. They chose Tessa, giving her a new home and future, but leaving Oliver behind shattered her heart more than anything else. On the day she left, Oliver hugged her tightly outside the orphanage and begged her never to completely forget about him after adoption. Tessa promised she would visit and write letters forever, but life slowly carried them in separate directions across the country afterward. Years later, standing inside the penthouse, Tessa continued staring at Oliver's portrait, while emotions violently crashed through her confused, exhausted mind all at once. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching from behind, as a tall businessman entered the living room carrying several office files. The man looked successful and powerful, but sadness filled his tired eyes as if he carried invisible pain every single day of his life. He politely introduced himself before asking why Tessa seemed so disturbed while staring endlessly at the portrait above the fireplace. Tessa nervously explained that she once knew the boy from the painting during childhood, inside a Wyoming orphanage many years before today. The businessman immediately froze in place before dropping every file directly onto the polished wooden floor beside his expensive leather shoes. His name was Michael Carter, and according to him, the little boy in the portrait was his missing son named Oliver. Michael explained that Oliver disappeared from Central Park 18 years earlier, while playing near a crowded playground during a family afternoon outing. Tessa carefully described Oliver's years inside Meadow Creek Orphanage, while Michael listened with tears silently rolling down his exhausted face throughout her story. She explained his love for airplanes, his nightmares, and the strange memory problems that had haunted him since childhood. Michael could barely breathe while hearing details that only someone truly close to Oliver could possibly know after all those painful missing years. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, he finally believed his son might still be alive somewhere in the world. Without wasting another moment, Michael begged Tessa to return with him immediately to Wyoming, so they could search for Oliver together before time slipped away again. Seeing the desperation in his eyes reminded Tessa of the lonely, frightened boy she once protected inside the orphanage years ago. During the flight to Wyoming, Michael showed Tessa old family photos and home videos of Oliver laughing happily beside his loving parents before tragedy destroyed everything. Tessa realized Oliver once had a beautiful life filled with love, comfort, and dreams before it was stolen away forever. When they arrived at Meadow Creek Orphanage, painful childhood memories immediately returned to Tessa, while they walked through the old brick building together in silence. Unfortunately, the orphanage staff refused to share any information because of strict legal privacy rules protecting former residents and records. Michael nearly lost hope again after traveling across the country, only to face another heartbreaking dead end, standing directly in front of him helplessly. But just as they prepared to leave, a familiar voice suddenly called Tessa's name from across the parking lot outside. Tessa turned around slowly and saw a grown man carrying tools while wearing dusty work clothes and heavy boots covered in dirt from labor. His face looked older and stronger now, but those unforgettable blue eyes instantly revealed the truth before he even spoke another word. "Oliver?" Tessa whispered emotionally while struggling to believe fate had truly reunited them after so many painful years apart from each other completely. Oliver smiled in shock after recognizing her and explained that he still worked at the orphanage as the maintenance groundskeeper. Michael stood nearby, completely speechless, while staring at the son he believed had vanished forever, nearly 18 years earlier from New York City without warning. Tessa gently introduced them before revealing the truth that changed every part of their lives within only a few emotional seconds. Oliver struggled to process the unbelievable reality, while Michael described personal childhood memories that no stranger could possibly know about him ever in life. Slowly, forgotten fragments returned to Oliver's traumatized mind as buried memories finally began reconnecting after years of darkness and confusion. Michael brought Oliver back to New York, where therapists carefully helped him recover memories hidden behind years of childhood trauma and emotional pain inside his mind. Although some details remained unclear forever, Oliver gradually accepted both his true identity and the family he had unknowingly lost. Investigators later discovered the kidnapper had been a former employee fired by Michael years earlier for stealing money from his company illegally and secretly. Seeking revenge and ransom money, the criminal kidnapped Oliver before eventually dying inside prison years later, without confessing everything completely. Over time, Oliver rebuilt his relationship with both parents while learning how to balance painful memories with the hopeful future now waiting ahead of him. Michael never stopped apologizing for failing to protect him, but Oliver slowly understood none of the tragedy was truly his fault. Tessa also became part of their family because without her bravery, none of them would have ever found each other again after all those years. Michael offered to pay for her university education, wanting to thank the woman who reunited him with his missing son forever. Years later, Tessa became a journalist, while Oliver studied aerospace engineering and continued chasing his lifelong dream of building airplanes someday for real. Please subscribe and share our channel, because we create emotional stories and meaningful videos especially for viewers like you every single day.